In 1985, the St. Louis Cardinals met the New York Mets 6 times in the last 4 weeks. The Mets won 4 of the 6 meetings, and yet the St. Louis Cardinals won the division by 3 games. That was 1985. In 1986, early in April, the Mets were tied for first, came into St. Louis. Howard Johnson provided the fireworks, and the Mets swept 4 and blew the Cardinals out of the water. Last night, the Cardinals, with 1 out away from defeat, turned it around to beat the Mets in a great comeback. And today, New York places its hopes on the right arm of its ace, Dwight Gooden, as time is running out, and they are 2.5 games behind the arch-rival St. Louis Cardinals.
The National Broadcasting Company, now in its 7th decade of bringing you baseball's memories. Baseball's milestones. Baseball's majesty. And baseball's magical moments. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today, from Shea Stadium, it's the St. Louis Cardinals versus the New York Mets. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Miller Brewing Company, sole sponsor of the U.S. Olympic Training Centers. By your nationwide Yugo dealers, bringing you America's most affordable new cars. By Lennox. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, you can't do better than Lennox. And by STP, makers of STP oil treatment. We've got what it takes to perform.
Hi, everybody. I'm Vin Scully, along with Joe Garagiola. Welcome to the showdown at Shea, where the Cardinals turned one of the great games around on the Mets last night, and it might very well have been the biggest defeat in the history of the Mets franchise. And the question is, can they recover?
Well, that's a good word, recover, because you can just, by what the Mets are saying, what you read, and everything you hear, they say, well, hey, we got to forget about that and go from here, worry about today's game. But the mere fact that they're talking about last night's game, you know how big that wound was, because they had that game won.
Indeed, they did. And, of course, this weekend, just to put it in its proper perspective, the biggest lead the Cardinals have enjoyed this year, 9.5 games. The biggest deficit for the New York Mets, 10.5 games. And here we are in September, and when they take the field today, 2.5 games separating them, and this is the first of 5 remaining meetings.
Well, they're going to have to look ahead of the schedule, not look behind, and injuries are going to play a big part. Ron Darling, who got hurt last night, is going to be out the rest of the year. We understand Jack Clark is out. Will he come back? But you can't say, hey, if we would have Darling and we have Clark, you got to play today and forget about injuries, forget about standings. Statistics will eat you up if you look for them.
Indeed, they will. 1985, it was the Cardinals stealing one on the Mets. 1986, the Mets shooting the Cardinals out of the water. And we'll find out what will happen today and the rest of the pennant race, with the lineups coming up right after this. Well, here in New York, we are waiting for the raindrops to go away, and the idea is we'll have first pitch in 2:30 local time, which would be about 5 minutes from now. So we're very close to the start of the second game of this 3-game series, and there'll be 5 counting today left with the Cardinals as far as the Mets are concerned.
You could really tell a difference both sides after that game last night. Cardinals, without a doubt, really perked them up after having left Montreal. They were swept, and then they come in here. It looks like they're going to lose the first one and only have a half-game lead and then get that big home run from Pendleton. They're really up.
And the Mets have to be down not only in the aftermath of losing that bitter game last night, but they received word today. In fact, the Mets are now issuing the statement that Dr. Fisk Warren had examined Ron Darling. He had strained ligaments in the right thumb, and Darling is lost for the remainder of the season. It's ironic, too, that in the Mets starting rotation, Darling was the only healthy pitcher all year, and now he goes down just when he was really at the top of his game.
And it was kind of a freaky injury. It was on a base hit. Vince Coleman bunts the ball, and he went to shovel it to first base, and he really fell on his right hand, his thumb, and it looked like it was going to be all right because he pitched after that, but he said it really got swollen, and he just couldn't even hardly hold the ball. So somebody's going to have to pick him up. Where do you get that from?
Well, this is countdown time. The first thing that should be pointed out, the Cardinals are on a road trip, and they will eventually be going back home. The Cardinals will play 14 games at home. The Mets, after today, will have only 8 games at home. So as we look at the remaining schedule, you have an idea that the pressure really is on the New York Mets. The Cardinals are sitting in the driver's seat.
No question, and you can look at the schedule, you can look at a lot of things. Well, what tells you that, I think, better than anything, Vin, we both know that, is that they're 2.5 games in front. They're on the loss side. They got 3 big games, and the schedule is starting to run out. That's so important.
What is very, very important today for the Mets, 2.5 back, time running out. Dwight Gooden has to pitch a gem. Gooden has won his last 6 decisions from St. Louis. In fact, the Mets had won 5 straight until they lost last night to St. Louis.
And just a thought. This game was supposed to start at 2:20. So both pitchers went out there and got ready to start at 2:20. Now it's going to start 10 minutes later. How much is that going to take out of them? That's a factor.
Oh, it will be a factor indeed. And again, even though there is a large home crowd, this Cardinal ball club has shown that it can beat you a lot of ways. And the surprise, of course, was that they beat the Mets last night with power, with Jack Clark out. Everybody thought that was the one weapon that the Cardinals did not have at hand. But instead, that's just what they needed, and that's just what they got.
And you can look for the Cardinals to run on anybody. And thinking of Gooden, Gooden has improved his move to first base. But when he first came up, he didn't have that good move. And it was pretty obvious. Nobody ever got on base against him, so he couldn't work on it. But in talking to Vince Coleman, you know he's going to run. We'll probably bunt against him. And I've said it before only because I heard Branch Rickey talk about it so much. Speed. The Cardinals have speed. They can manufacture runs, and speed never has a slump.
And, of course, that brings to mind the fact that one of the big surprises for 1987 would be the performance of Howard Johnson of the New York Mets with his 30-30 club. I think that really, the fact that Howard Johnson has hit more home runs than any third baseman in the major leagues, that's truly remarkable.
It really is. 30-30, I tell you, when you have played the game, you realize just how high that mountain is, because when you hit 30 home runs, it's usually some big slow-footed guy, but no longer is that the case.
It looks, as the Cardinals report, that Jack Clark will not play at all during this series. However, they do expect him to come back with a sore ankle. But for Ron Darling to repeat, he's gone. And now I think they will have to look, the question you asked, who's going to pick it up? It's going to have to be Sid Fernandez, who's been out with a bad shoulder.
Well, it's the thing that Davy Johnson will have to wrestle with. And if I can just switch it a little bit, Vin, we've been reading about dissension and cliques in the Cardinal clubhouse. And in walking around there and talking to different people, my observation is it's almost like the names change, but the situation's always the same. When you're losing, it's dissension, and when you're winning, it's just good old-fashioned needling.
Well, without any needles, without any dissension, let's go down on the field now and take a look at the Mets defensively. We'll also have a chance to check the Cardinal lineup, and we'll get to work here at Shea Stadium in New York. For the visiting Cardinals, who have won 7 of the 13 meetings, Vince Coleman, followed by Ozzie Smith at shortstop, and then Tommy Herr at second base. Dan Dreesen, playing with his 5th National League team, is at first base. Willie McGee in center field. Last night's hero, Terry Pendleton, who hit that home run. Then it'll be John Morris in right field, Tony Pena behind the plate, and the pitcher Greg Matthews. As Dwight Gooden loosens up, here are the Mets defensively.
It'll be McReynolds in left field. Mookie Wilson is in center field. Strawberry in right field. Johnson, Santana, Tuffle, Hernandez, Carter behind the plate, and Gooden on the mound. Vin might just add that the grass in the infield a bit high during batting practice. In front of home plate was hard, but now this little bit of rain that came down, infield practice really doesn't tell you a whole lot, because you're going to have to really wait to see what happens when that ball hits the grass, and I think it will scoot through there.
Dwight Gooden will be on the mound to prevent those balls from scooting through. It's interesting that as the Mets rely so heavily on Dwight Gooden, his record in September and October is 12-4, and his earned run average in the pressure spot of September, October is 1.5 runs per 9 innings. In fact, in his career after August 31st, Dwight had made 19 starts and had gotten into the 8th inning at least 16 times. The Mets relying so heavily on him. The Mets were a break-even team when Gooden made his first start. And as they took the field today, they are 20 games over 500. However, the one set of numbers that would be distressing for the Mets, the big difference in Gooden at night and Gooden in the daytime. I mean, he really is baseball's answer to Cole Porter. And he'll be pitching to Vince Coleman, Ozzie Smith, and Tommy Herr. However, for Dwight Gooden, it's almost a night game. It's dark enough, the lights are on, and we'll see how he goes.
That was an interesting quote that he had about how he feels about night games and day games.
Well, when you look at him, and his winning percentage is over 800 at night, and then look at it, how he pitches his earned run average in day games, you can understand why they would like it to be dark. He's barely more than a break-even pitcher, 581 lifetime. So here we go. Strike.
I would think that Coleman would test him early with that infield being a bit wet. Hernandez is back, and I mean by testing him by trying to beat out a bunt.
Cardinals on the road, and Coleman has had at least one hit in each of the first 4 games. 0-2. A highly enthusiastic crowd. The rain's not going to dampen the spirits here. And a very, very senior quartet of umpires, especially assigned for this pressure series. John McSherry is the plate umpire. He and the second base umpire, Bruce Fremming, have 17 years. Here's the pitch to Coleman. Got him looking. So 1 away. So with 1 out,
Number 23, first baseman Dan Driesen. Coming around to the plate, number 51, center fielder, Willie McGee.
We'd like to apologize for the audio problems. This is Marv Albert, and I have Joe Garagiola alongside me. We are right adjacent to the St. Louis Cardinal dugout, a most unique vantage point. We have had audio problems in the booth, so Vince Scully is remaining back behind home plate. Those of you who have been with us know it is a bases loaded, one-out situation. Willie McGee, the batter. We're top of the first inning. And Dwight Gooden having his problems.
Wildness. That curveball got him in trouble with Ozzie Smith, Marv. I tell you, this is some vantage point.
You like this?
I love it. I wish we'd broadcast out here all the time.
So it's 1 ball and 1 strike. I can recall during the Olympics several years ago, the Soviet play-by-play announcer, for some weird reason, preferred the location right at ice level. And I feel that we are in a similar situation, although it was his choice, I should point out.
I can believe that. It's 1 ball and 1 strike, 1 out. Good fastball. Strike 2. You don't need a radar gun to know this guy's throwing hard.
Joe, you may prefer this location from here on in. You're in the action.
You really are, Marv. You really are. Bases loaded, first inning, 1 out. That's the ball that Willie McGee usually chases. And Carter did a good job of blocking that ball. They ought to have a statistic, Marv, for catchers when they block a ball like that to be the equivalent to the RBI.
That's spoken from the point of view of a one-time catcher.
Very objective.
Terry Pendleton, last night's Cardinal hero, man on deck.
Two-two pitch. Another curveball bounces in front of the plate, blocked nicely. He's throwing a 55-footer, hoping that McGee will chase it, but now McGee's in great shape because Gooden's got to go with his best pitch, and obviously it's his fastball, so it'll be strength against strength. Bases are loaded. There you see him. Ozzie Smith at third, Tommy Herr, and Dan Dreesen. There's that curveball. 3 balls, 2 strikes, 1 out, top of the first. There was the fastball, and that's a pretty good indication of how hard he threw that. When the pitcher gets in trouble, obviously he goes to his strength, and Gooden is just playing good old country hardball right now, rearing back and pumping. Three and 2, 1 out. Walked him. That forces in a run. The Cardinals take a 1-0 lead. And here comes Mel Stottlemyre out of the Met dugout. He wants to talk to his young pitcher. This is the guy that has to do it for him. He's got to come up with a gem today, Dwight Gooden. And now he's 1-0, trailing. Bases still loaded. And Terry Pendleton, who hit that big home run last night in the batter's box.
And Joe, what was most unusual about the home run by Terry Pendleton, as we discussed on the pregame, he said he was going for the home run, and it's so rare that when a player goes for the home run that he actually will hit it out.
So true. He said until he had 2 strikes, which was really a good piece of hitting. He knew what he had to do, and he went up, and he moved up a little bit on McDowell in the windup and got a hold of a sinker, and he's up there now, and I'm sure that Stottlemyre is making sure that Gooden doesn't let up to get the ball over the plate. 1-0, Cardinals with 1 run in, 1 man out, bases still loaded. Strike.
And last night, the Mets were delighted in being able to jump out in front early. They felt that the key to the success against a club like the Cardinals, where there's not much power, where they really grind out the runs and have to struggle for runs, is to get up early. But it did not matter, and that was a crushing blow by this man, Terry Pendleton.
Fastball, well hit, center field. Mookie slips, makes the play. Herr's tagging up, throw goes into third base. Cardinals lead 2-0. It rained a little bit here, and Mookie had a little bit of trouble. I doubt if he would have had to play at the plate, because Nick Lavia, and we're only about 20 feet from him, you could hear him holler immediately, tag up, and you can see Mookie played that like he was on a waterbed. It's slick out there.
And John Morris, a product of Seton Hall University, stepping in. I think John set the Cardinal record today for most tickets requested. And he's a kid who has really hurt the Mets, particularly as a pinch hitter last season.
He had something like 80, I read. Ball 1.
Once again, let me point out that Joe Garagiola and I are alongside the St. Louis Cardinal dugout. I wonder how happy Vince Scully is up in the booth at this point. Microphone not working, so Joe getting down in a hurry. And we are just to the left of the dugout.
And there we are.
A fine location.
these planes overhead is like you're on a runway. 2 balls, no strikes, 2 outs, 2-0. Cardinals have taken the lead. We're in the top of the first. Out of play. 2 balls and a strike. This series has been sold out. This whole area really buzzing with the open and the Mets and Cardinals battling it out. Mets tough news today. Ron Darling will be lost for the rest of the season. There you see the runners. Dreesen is on at second base. Willie McGee is on at first. It gets through for a base hit. Dreesen's going to score. McGee will be held up at third. Base hit for Morris. 3-0 St. Louis. And that's the last thing the Mets wanted to happen, because when the Cardinals get out in front, that really starts the marathon. In direct contrast to what you were talking about, Mark, last night when they were behind. They can't play hit and run and steal.
And this one of the rockier starts for Dwight Gooden, who has come back a long way. The drug rehabilitation right at the start. And he has propelled himself to a record of 13-5, where there are folks supporting Dwight Gooden for Cy Young honors with a fast finish, but really struggling here this afternoon.
Two men out. Willie McGee is on at third. Morris is on at first. And here is Pena. Strike.
Dwight Gooden going full count, 3-2 on 4 straight Cardinal batters here in the first. Smith, Herr, Dreesen, and McGee. Not a good sign. A lot of pitchers being thrown, aside from the fact that Gooden and the Mets are trailing now 3-0.
That was his good move. That was not that commercial move. You could hear it pop into Hernandez's glove. There goes the runner at first. Carter makes the throw, and everybody's safe. That's the Cardinal game. Gary Carter, they had that set up. That's the full arm bluff, where he went right through with his arm, held on to the ball, hoping that McGee would be trapped off third. Carter does a good job. He looks the runner back, stops him. Good fake. Holds on to that ball. Might have tipped it off by looking to third. But his arm, if you were looking at his arm, he went through with it. A little looper, right field, base hit, 1 run in. Here comes Morris. He's going to score as Pena drives in 2 more. Cardinals a big inning here in the first. Hit that ball right off the handle. And it's a 5-0 score.
And no activity to this point in the Met bullpen. How long do you stay with Gooden?
That's surprising. I would think somebody'd be up throwing. Here's Matthews. So the Cardinals have batted around here in the first inning. 2 men out. Pena's on at first. Strike.
Rick Matthews does not have a winning record this season against the Mets, but the Cardinals point out that in 2 of his losses, he has pitched very well. They feel very confident in Matthews for today's ball game.
1 ball, 1 strike. I'll tell you, with the 5-run lead, Whitey, if this guy gets in trouble, will trot everybody out, including the general manager if he has to. This is a tremendous game for the Cardinals. And the Mets, they know what they're up against. Right field, Strawberry is there. That ends the inning. But it's a big inning for the Cardinals as they score 5. It's St. Louis 5, Mets nothing as we go into the bottom of the first. It'll be Mookie Wilson, Tim Tuffle, and Keith Hernandez for the Mets here in the bottom of the first. Marv, a big 5-run inning.
Joe, I know you and Vin discussed right at the start that the pitchers, Greg Matthews and Dwight Gooden, could be affected by the rain delays. I think Gooden was affected.
Well, the scoreboard indicates that. You won't know until you talk to him, obviously, but the reason you say that is because he had geared himself to start at 2:20, and the game didn't start till 2:30. There you see the Mets lineup. Wilson in center field, Tuffle batting second at second base, Hernandez at first base. Strawberry, who's on a tear, is in right field, batting fourth. McReynolds in left field. Gary Carter, the catcher. Hojo, Howard Johnson at third base. Santana batting eighth, and Dwight Gooden is the pitcher and batting ninth. Matthews, he has to have his fastball and his change of pace working in kind of a tandem. One has to set up the other. As we look at the defense, it's Coleman, McGee, and Morris in the outfield. A lot of speed. Pendleton and Smith on that side. Forget it, that's vacuum cleaner country. Tommy Herr and Dreesen at first base, replacing the injured Jack Clark. Pena is behind the plate, and Matthews on the mound. Matthews doesn't overpower you with his fastball. Can throw his change of pace at any time. I would say his curveball, his breaking ball, ranks third. There's a strike. Won 9 and lost 9. 4.19 earned run average. One ball in the strike.
Mookie Wilson has had the hot bat as of late, hitting .375, 18 for his last 48.
Outside, 2 balls and 1 strike. That's the last thing that Whitey Herzog wants to see, is the pitcher with the 5-run lead fall behind hitters. 2 balls and 2 strikes to count.
Joe, these two clubs will meet again in St. Louis, a wind-up series. Now, if this game had been rained out, and of course they do meet here again tomorrow, because they do not have any other open dates, they would have had to make these games up in St. Louis when Jack Clark would be available. On the other hand, do you think the Cardinals would have preferred playing coming off the crushing victory last night with Terry Pendleton bringing them back in the 9th inning?
Play them one at a time. Always easier than that doubleheader. 2 balls and 2 strikes. That always looks good when they throw the ball past the pitcher.
Montreal Expos in front of the Chicago Cubs in the 7th, 4-1. Hubie Brooks with a Montreal home run.
Now to play, so Mookie is really working Matthews hard, which is what Davey Johnson wants. Obviously, you're looking for base runners. You're looking for more pitches to be made by their starter with that 5-run lead. Struck him out, 1 out, and here's Tuffle.
Joe, I'm wondering, you think Graham McNamee started this way, broadcasting field level?
And Jack Graney and Harry Heilman, Wade Hoyt, those great ones. I love Tuffle. I love that shuffle. When are you going to put that on the pregame show and set it to music?
A good idea. There'll be a check in the mail, a production fee.
You'll go into it. There it is. It's a strike.
And Tuffle has been struggling. Only 2 hits his last 24 at-bats.
One ball and 1 strike, 1 out. Cardinals 5, Mets nothing. We're in the bottom half of the 1st inning. Gooden's wildness. 3 base on balls. Low, 2 balls and a strike. You know, you look at your scorecard, you see 3 base on balls, a sacrifice fly. You figure 4 guys don't even have an official time at bat, and there's 5 big runs on the scoreboard. Low, 3-1. Walked him. And that's bad pitching. walks Tuffle, and here's Hernandez. One man out. Inside, ball one.
Hernandez had a roller coaster night in the field last night. He made 2 magnificent plays and had one go right through his legs.
That was really a surprise because he makes the routine play. Way high. Somebody's got to go out and at least talk to him. You got to go out there and say something. Here comes somebody, Mike Rourke. One of the real tough things when you get a lead like that is to make sure you're going to throw strikes and you start aiming the ball rather than throwing it. I mean, there's no strategy going to go on here. He's going to kind of jump him a little bit, maybe take a little bite out of him by saying, hey, come on, we got you 5 runs. Throw some strikes. You can't, there's no way to defense a base on balls. Just be yourself, pitch within yourself. I often wondered about that phrase, pitch within yourself, hit within yourself. How else do you do it?
I was going to ask you about that. That has become one of the popular phrases recently, whatever the sport. Keep within yourself. I know you follow that philosophy in broadcasting.
Yeah, I keep within myself, next to you. 2 balls, no strikes, 1 man out. Hernandez the batter. Cardinals lead 5-0. Foul ball, foul ball. Interesting, you couldn't see anything from here. You had to wait for McSherry to make that call. And I tell you something, from here, when he makes the call, you know it.
Yes, we are field level adjacent to the Cardinal dugout because of audio problems. The microphones upstairs in the broadcast booth are not working. So Joe Garagiola making it down to our location. Vince Scully still up in the booth. Vince taking notes, keeping score. Joe, I was headed to Buffalo for the Jets-Bills tomorrow.
Well, another new experience for you, Marv. 2 balls, 1 strike, 1 out. Morris should handle it. Easy out. So there are 2 away. And it brings up Darryl Strawberry.
Now batting, number 18, right fielder, Darryl Strawberry.
I think the Mets would like the weatherman to cooperate at this point. I don't think they mind the downpour, trailing 5-0.
And they would look for it. Ball 1.
Darryl Strawberry with an unusual statistic. He has homered in his first at-bat 14 times this season. And he hit a shot last night against the Cardinals.
Tried to pull a fastball, and it's 1 ball, 1 strike with 2 outs. Cardinals lead 5-0. We're in the bottom half of the first. 2 men out. Tuffle's on at first. Cardinals with a big home run last night tied it and won it in extra innings. 2.5 game lead. Big game. Ball 2. 2 balls and a strike. Strawberry would like to touch one off. Matthews doesn't want to have anything happen after he gets 5 runs. Quick throw. Nice play by Treason. Pena threw one off his knees, bounced it to Dreesen, made a good play, and they're going to throw the ball out. You never want that other team to score in the same inning you score. Tommy Herr has it in time. That ends the inning. So at the end of one complete inning here at Shea Stadium, it's the Cardinals 5, the Mets nothing. The Cardinal bench, they have been in first place since May 20th, 115 straight days. Fastball is low, ball one to Vince Coleman.
And the Cardinals finish up with 13 of their last 16 games at home, a stat that they like to point at.
1 ball and 1 strike. You have to wonder about that rain delay. Matthews came out of it okay, didn't give up a run, but Gooden was touched for 5, and the key to me in that inning, the base on balls. He walked Hurd, Dreesen, and McGee.
And for Dwight Gooden, easily his worst performance of the season.
No way. No way with that kind of speed. Now we'll see a battle, a 5-run lead. Coleman's always got the green light. In fact, Whitey Herzog, I think, put it in focus when he said about the speed. Once that ball hits, and we talked about how hard it is in front of home plate. Watch what happens here. Gooden actually overpowers him, hits it on that hard part in front of home plate, and there's no way they're going to get Coleman. Whitey said he'll know that they have great speed when someone scores on a pop fly to the catcher. It's been said about the Cardinals that somebody's going to score from first base on a sacrifice fly. Coleman's got a good lead. He draws the throw. He'll study the front leg of Dwight Gooden. That's the first move that he'll look for. Gooden has improved in holding men on.
And Coleman seeking number 99 on the season.
And there he goes. Carter gets rid of it in good shape, but forget about it. I tell you, they got a hitting coach, a pitching coach, batting coach. They need a track coach. Here's Coleman. Good jump. Head down. Head first slide, and he picks up speed as he gets down.
Of course, Charlie Finley did that a number of years ago. He hired Herb Washington. Didn't exactly turn the ball club around.
Ozzie Smith tries to beat out a bunt. That's what they'll do. They'll take that little nick out of you. Here's Coleman on at second base and really does not have an official time at bat. A walk and a stolen base. Ozzie Smith will hit a ground ball. Coleman will be at third base. Sacrifice fly. They'll pick up a run. They manufacture runs.
Vince felt a bit embarrassed last night because Ron Darling picked him off.
And there it is. This is going to be a tough play for Hojo. Got him, and Coleman, he made a fake, but Hernandez, now Hernandez calls time. Coleman, he had ideas. Ozzie tried to lay that ball down to beat it out for the base hit. But you know what? He'll get a sacrifice for that. And you got a man on third, and nobody's been the bat official. There's the play. They got him. Frank Pulley, the first base umpire.
Here is Tommy Herr, who made the statement last week that got quite a bit of play in St. Louis. He felt that the St. Louis team is not as close as they should be, that there are underlying tensions. Of course, you can point to a lot of ball clubs who have been successful. For example, the 69-70 championship New York Knicks, who were not close, but it did not matter. What do you make of that?
I tell you, I always, when I read something like that, fastball is a strike, I want to see when it was said. If it was said after losing the series or losing a tough game, that's when it's usually said, because if it's on a losing ball club, it's dissension and bickering and they're not close. If it's winning, the ball club is winning, then it's a spirited ball club. Infield in. And I mean, he's throwing hard. Herr did not get around on that fastball. 2 strikes. Gooden looking for the strikeout here.
He felt that they were much closer when they won it in '85. But again, I don't know if that you can measure that, if it has any meaning at all.
Well, I think he was thinking about when they were in a series and how good things were, and then when things get a little rocky, you really have to dissect it. And baseball is a team game played by individuals. You don't have to like the guy, but he's going to try to get that base hit. Way outside. 1 ball, 2 strikes, 1 out. 5-0. Cardinals lead, top of the second.
I know your old Pirate ball clubs, everybody loved each other, right?
Oh, we got along great. We were loved by the other team.
I was going to mention that.
Oh, yeah. They would send cabs, buses, be sure we showed up. You don't win pennants with love. 1 ball, 2 strikes, 1 out. Infield really in tight. Santana can't make the play. Coleman will score. Her big turn. Let's see how they call it. He put it in play. That's all he did. He did not swing hard. It's 6-0 Cardinals. Here it is. He should have had that ball. I don't know what they've called it yet. I would give him an error from down here. They gave him a hit.
Yes, very generous official scoring.
Here's Dan Dreesen. Dreesen walked his last time up and scored.
Boy, this one is going. It could be as crushing as last night. Last night was sudden. But this one will sink in unless there is a very sharp turn.
Both managers really have a job to do. Davey has to keep his ball club in the game, and Whitey has to tell him, hey, it's one of those Yogi Berra games. It ain't over till it's over. Dreesen. 1 ball, 1 strike, 1 out. There you see Herzog. Carter looking towards the bench. He gave him a sign. Stottlemyre picked up the phone. You can really see it from here. There you see Stottlemyre. Way high outside. Gooden really struggling. 2 balls, 1 strike.
And Dan Dreesen, a guy who is just delighted as we see activity.
There goes her. Hit and run play, and it's fouled off. 1 man out. Hit and run play put on by the Cardinals. And it's 2 balls, 2 strikes on Dreesen. Say, they keep the infield moving all the time on defense with the stolen base, the hit and run play, the run and hit, bunts. The infield, when you play against the Cardinals, you know you have to field that ball cleanly.
That is Gene Walter starting to throw in the Met bullpen, just up from Tidewater.
2 balls, 2 strikes, 1 out. 3-2.
Started to say Dan Dreesen delighted to be back from Louisville. He said nothing personal about the city of Louisville, but he hated being there.
There's only one place to play, right here. 3-2. Her, a good lead. There he goes. And it's pull foul. He's made 59 pitches in this inning. We kind of got a makeshift operation down here. It's really a $1.98 booth we have here. It's a Kmart special. But we're having audio problems. We're down beyond third base. Herr's going. Santana can't get it. By him. Tommy Herr digging hard. He'll stop at third. Santana tried to short hop it. Couldn't make the play. And now we have base runners at first and third. One out. McGee's the batter, and here's the replay, and Santana really got caught in between hops, Marv.
And you can hear the reaction of the crowd. Raphael got a break just a moment ago on a bouncer that perhaps should have been called an error. It was credited as a hit, but this one a no question, although the error has not been posted.
Interesting to note that ball, once again, when it hit in front of the plate, took that big hop, and it caught Santana in between hops. McGee, bouncing ball. Tuffle will go to Santana for one. McGee is out at first base. A big double play by the Mets. So they only pick up one, and as we go into the bottom half of the second inning, it's St. Louis 6, Mets nothing.
From our luxury box location alongside the St. Louis Cardinal dugout, Marv Albert with Joe Garagiola. We've had audio problems upstairs, so I guess Joe's going to head back upstairs. Vin Scully is now on microphone. Welcome back, Vin.
Thank you, and I'm proud of both of you that you did not interfere with a ball in play.
Hey, Vin, I'm going to stay down here for about a half inning, okay?
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of a bird's eye view, and I'm sure you can give us a particular insight being that close to the Cardinal dugout. As we go to the bottom of the second inning, this game certainly under the heading of the best laid plans of mice and men and Mets and technicians, etc. Kevin McReynolds, followed by Gary Carter, and then Howard Johnson. Earlier, you caught a glimpse of left-handed Gene Walter throwing in the bullpen. Line drive off the glove of Pendleton. By the time he recovers, McReynolds aboard.
I got to tell you something. As close as we are, I don't even know how he got a glove on it, and he looked for it. Tell you, a quick reaction, but a tip-off that the Mets are not going to be up there taking pitches. They're trailing by 6, and there's McReynolds jumping on the first one, Ben.
Indeed, what Pendleton did do was cut down and take away the opportunity of an extra base hit, and consequently give the Cardinals a chance for a double play ball with Gary Carter. Of course, Greg Matthews is not a pitcher on whose shoulders a heavy burden will rest lightly, no matter what the score. He has not had a win in his last 5 starts on the road. He's had 2 wins in his last 10 starts, and they were both in the friendly confines of Busch Stadium in St. Louis. 1-0. And that's a fly ball to center. Willie McGee, with 3 gold gloves to his credit, puts that away. 1 down. You get an idea of how hard they're throwing down there in that box, Joe?
You really do. Matthews, in contrast to Gooden, no comparison. And that's why watching Gooden walk all those people really made you wonder if he just got the ball over, he was going to be tough, because he's got good stuff.
Howard Johnson, the newest member of the 30-30 club. And for Darryl Strawberry and Howard Johnson, the first pair of 30-30 homer teammates in Mets history. So Johnson at the plate with McReynolds at first, 1 out in the second inning, and the Cardinals leading 6-0. Terry Leach, the right-hander, has joined Gene Walter in the Mets bullpen. Oh, 0-1 the count. 6 runs, 5 hits for the Cardinals, no runs, 1 hit, and an error for the Mets. The error charged to Rafael Santana. Whitey Herzog, who once upon a time was a Mets third base coach and the Mets farm director. That would be in the late 60s and early 70s. And of course, it was Whitey who traded Keith Hernandez to New York for Neil Allen and Rick Owenby in '83. Allen has returned to New York only in a Yankee uniform. One ball and 1 strike.
Vin,
yeah.
It's a little tough getting back and forth, but if I were catching right now, I think I would have jumped on Matthews a little bit about even worrying about McReynolds. You got a 6-run lead. Don't worry about him. Get that hitter. I hate to see pitchers lose any kind of concentration when they got a 6-run lead.
High fly ball up into that slanting wind. That means Morris will have to come in to get it, and does. We have a pretty strong breeze out of the southeast, and that usually means a wet wind, and that's what we've had today. So that fly ball was suddenly chopped in half. So 2 down in the second inning, and the batter will be Rafael Santana, and this crowd is so frustrated they have to take it out on somebody. So they kind of booed him. The Mets right now #1 in attendance, and the Cardinals are right back of them. And the Cardinals have 14 more games at home, and the Mets have 8 more games at home. So McReynolds at first with 2 down, and Santana at the plate. And he hits it to right, but Morris had shortened up, and he's there to take care of it. So 3 fly balls and a base hit. No runs, 1 hit, and a man left. At the end of 2, 6-0 St. Louis. We'll be right back after these messages from your local station. As we go to the 3rd inning, the Cardinals leading 6-0, and left-hander Gene Walter, whose spot will lead off for the Mets in the bottom of the 3rd inning, will pick up the pieces for Dwight Gooden. For Gooden and his career, this is somewhat of a memorable day. You'd have to go back to May of 1984 when Gooden gave up 8 runs in 2 1/3 innings. That was against Houston. In August of '84, he gave up 7 runs in 3 innings against the Cardinals. And in the middle of June last year, he gave up 7 runs in a game against Montreal. So for Dwight, one of the shortest outings and most expensive as far as he's concerned. He went 2 innings and allowed 6 runs, 5 hits, 3 walks, 1 strikeout, and there was an error back of it. And Gene Walter will pick up. For the Cardinals, who have won 7 of 13 against the Mets, Terry Pendleton, John Morris, and then Tony Pena. Since Gooden only went 2 innings today, this is his earliest departure of any game he has started in his major league career. The Cardinals, should they win today, will get to the 500 mark since the All-Star break. It has been a ball club that has had spurts of good play, but really coming into last night's game, they were 2 games under 500 since the All-Star break. Pendleton had a scoring fly ball in the 1st inning, and there you can see the second half slump, and where 1 minute they were out in sight in July, the Cardinals were leading by 9.5 games, and it looked like they were going to run away with it. But then when the All-Star break, they came right on back. They've had a lot of reasons with the injuries of John Tudor and Jack Clark, Danny Cox, Tony Pena, Tommy Herr. And now, of course, they've lost Clark for this series. Fly ball to right field, but again, the wind will knock that down, and Strawberry will make the catch. That ball was hit a lot harder than it would appear, but the wind took all the air out of it. So 1 away, and John Morris, who singled to center to drive in a run in the 1st inning. If you weren't with us, Coleman opened up and struck out, and the crowd was wild, thinking that Gooden was going to turn in a gem. And then Ozzie Smith, who is hitting over 350 against Gooden going into the game, doubled to right. Herr walked, Dreesen walked, McGee walked for a run. Pendleton's fly ball was good for another run. Morris's single was good for 2 more, and then Pena's single knocked in the 5th run. It is 6-0 Cardinals. Well, one thing, and we've mentioned it before about Whitey Herzog. Whitey has said all year long, for whatever reason, the first 3 innings of every game has taken at least an hour. Well, this game has taken an hour, and we've only played 2 innings, but I don't think Whitey minds hanging around on this one. Fly ball slicing to left center. Mookie Wilson is there. 2 down. The batter will be Tony Pena. Joe is on his way up from the box alongside the Cardinal dugout. This has been kind of a tough day for us technically. And he has arrived.
I tell you, it's a great vantage point, but I'd rather do it from here.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you talk about time. That Cardinal bench, it didn't look or sound any different when I walked through it than it did during batting practice.
Really?
They're up.
Tony Pena single to right. to drive in John Morris in the first inning. The Cardinals, besides scoring 6 runs, have already left their imprint on this game. They've stolen 2 bases. This is an 11-game road trip for St. Louis. Fouled away. They had a tough time in Montreal. They're trying to heal in New York. Then they'll play Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And after this road trip, the Cardinals will have only 1 series in Chicago in the last 2.5 weeks. They will have 14 games at home. So if they get out of here holding on to a comfortable lead, they'll be in somewhat of a fat city position.
Then I noticed that the plane is not flying directly over the ballpark. The reason I say that is Hernandez breaks it down. He doesn't look at the flags because it swirls. He says when the planes fly directly over the ballpark, it's blowing out.
Blowing out to
left field.
Left field. Little fly ball to right. Strawberry digging to the line, and he's just about there, and that's that. So 3 fly balls, and Gene Walter finally does what Dwight Gooden could not do. He retired the Cardinals in order. Well, to paraphrase, east is east and west is west and east is best. Look at the best records. All Eastern teams, spearheaded by Detroit and Toronto, the Cardinals and the Mets, Montreal, the Yankees, Milwaukee, and Minnesota. Minnesota finally getting in there. Mark Carrion, C-A-R-R-E-O-N, called up from Tidewater. Carrion was, among other things, an International League All-Star. He was the Player of the Month in July. And he'll be hitting for Gene Walter in the bottom of the 3rd inning. So Mark Carrion getting in at bat. He'll be followed by Mookie Wilson and then Tim Tuffle in the 3rd inning, with the Cardinals leading 6-0. Fouled away. 0-2. We're talking about the Cardinal side of the race. The Mets were 10 games out of first place after the break, and they made up 7.5 games in the next 27 games. So that by the 20th of August, the Mets were 2.5 games out of first. A little looper into center field for a base hit. So Mark Carrion gets his first major league hit as he just went out after that pitch and hit it to center.
Well, it tells you he's a free swinger because that ball is out of the strike zone. It was a good pitch. He just reached and went for it. The name sounds familiar. His dad was a catcher with the White Sox, Camilo Carrion, and the youngster just went up there and served one.
So now with a runner at first, nobody out in the 3rd inning, 6-0 in favor of the Cardinals, and the Mets trying to come back. I guess the biggest single shock about today for the Mets and their fans, they have been relying on great starting pitching. And to have a bad outing from Gooden had to really shake up the ball club. Foul ball. Recently in one stretch, the Mets had won 10 out of 12. The starters were 9-1, and they were averaging 7 2/3 innings a shot. And the earned run average of the starters was only 2. And all of a sudden, Darling is gone for the rest of the year from the accident last night. And Gooden was, as well, the worst game he's ever pitched in his big league career.
I tell you, I felt down there he had good stuff, but his control, I mean, the base on balls just it did him in.
Naturally, it will be pointed out that his worst game was a day game, albeit a gray, wet one. 1-2. So carry on at first, held on by Dan Dreesen. We're in the bottom of the 3rd, Cardinals 6 and the Mets nothing. Mookie Wilson, the hitter, has hit in 11 of his last 13. And he has hit a home run in each of his last 2 games. In fact, he's just 1 shy with 9 home runs of his career high. 2-2. Montreal, meanwhile, trying to take advantage of the Mets' plight, and Montreal breezing in Chicago 7-1. 2-2. Foul back and out of play. There's Terry Leach, who will be pitching to the Cardinals in the 4th inning. Greg Matthews, Vince Coleman, and Ozzie Smith. 2-2. And now Matthews kept looking at his hand, and he wants another ball. He's having trouble gripping it. 3-2.
And Mike Rourke is already, he's up, and what he's motioning, I was just watching him, is that he's standing straight up when he releases that ball. And Rourke obviously has a sign with him as to what he's doing something wrong.
Outside, ball 4. So for the first time today, the Mets have 2 men on base, nobody out. And you have Tuffle, Hernandez, and Strawberry due out.
The thing that does to your ball club is you got a 6-run lead, and even by throwing over to first base, infielders get set. They're ready to make the play, and boom, it goes to first base as a let-up. They're ready for a pitch, boom, it's ball 2. Ready for a play, boom, it's ball 3, and pretty soon they'll be on their heels, and they will not make the good play. You got that kind of a lead, you have to go out and get them and throw strikes. And sure, you'll say it's easy up here, but you've got to do it if you're going to win.
As you can see, Tuffle is struggling, 2 for his last 25, but he also has 10 home runs, getting close to his career high. Off speed for a strike, 0-1. So Tuffle trying to light up the inning with Hernandez on deck. 2 on, nobody out in the 3rd. Cardinals 6, Mets nothing. 1-1. Tomorrow, the concluding game of the series, Danny Cox and David Cone, as you see Keith Hernandez on deck. One ball, 1 strike. Breaking ball missed.
Keep fooling around like that, somebody's going to touch one off, and he's going to be gone.
No one throwing in the Cardinal bullpen. They have the luxury of a 6-0 lead here in the 3rd. Fastball. Got it in up around the letters. And now Mike Rourke says, wait a minute. Even though that was a strike, I didn't like the delivery, and he's heading for the mound.
The motion that he made, Vin, was that when he finishes up, he kind of backed up a little bit, like, and Whitey's on the phone making sure the bullpen knows what's going on. Rourke, like all pitching coaches, they know exactly what their pitchers do when they're pitching well and when they get out of sync. And he didn't wait, even though that was a strike.
You know, we were looking at one of the great pitchers in baseball who has that flaw of being a stiff back pitcher, a fellow who has kind of a whiplash delivery instead of follow through, and that's Don Sutton. But most of the time, if you throw like that, you're in trouble, as we see Bob Forsch loosening up in the Cardinal pen. 2 balls and 2 strikes. The count at Tim Tuffle. 2 on, nobody out. 6-0 St. Louis. Ground ball hit on that wet grass. The throw to second just in time. The combination of Mookie Wilson's speed and the wet grass made that a very close play.
Wet and high, Vin. Before the game, watching them, you could see the grass was high, and what you worried about was the ball skipping off the grass on the throw. You knew it was going to have to eat its way through there. Look at it slow down, and Ozzie just does get Mookie.
Keith Hernandez coming up with runners at 1st and 3rd. We'll mention something that we mentioned at the start of the game. A senior group of umpires working this series. John McSherry and Bruce Fremming, 17 years. Frank Pooley, 16 years. And Terry Tate, 15 years. So they have been around. Bobby Ojeda now has joined Terry Leach in the Mets bullpen.
And Eddie Vargo is here, who is the supervisor. So they got all kinds of umpires.
I think Eddie Vargo handpicked this quartet to work the series. Strike. Keith Hernandez flied to right in the 1st inning. It is 6-0 Cardinals, 3rd inning. Bob Forsch throwing behind Greg Matthews in the Cardinal bullpen. Ball on the corner, 1-1. Keith has hit in 8 of his last 9. 1-2. So Tuftle standing at first, carry on at third, 1 out on the third, 6-0 St. Louis. Hernandez has tied a career high in home runs with 16, and he is 4 hits away from the 2,000 mark in his career. 1-2 the count. On deck, Darryl Strawberry. Ground ball to Ozzie. He's feeding her, and he doubles him at first easily. So a 6-4-3 double play. No runs, a hit, a man left. At the end of 3, it is 6-0 Cardinals. Here's a look back at a very special Olympic moment. As we go to the 4th inning at Shea Stadium in New York, with the Cardinals leading 6-0. The Mets using their 3rd pitcher. Dwight Gooden went 2. Gene Walter pitched an inning, and now the right-hander Terry Leach comes out of the bullpen to try to keep the Cardinals on the ground. Terry Leach, who had been magnificent in the early portion of the year. Remember, he was 10-0, and in fact, had Leach not done what he did, the Mets might have been buried. With the return of Rick Aguilera, Leach went back into the bullpen. He's 11-1. His one defeat was at Wrigley Field, Chicago. However, since July 11th, he has really struggled. His earned run average in 12 games is 6, and he's given up 5 home runs in his last 23 innings. So Gooden, Walter, and Leach trying to stem the tide here.
Now pitching. And batting ninth, number 26.
I'm sure there are people, especially if the Mets are blown out today, who will feel that the Mets just suffered a letdown that can't be retrieved from losing last night.
Oh, there'll be all kinds of reasons given. That'll be one of them.
Yeah.
But again, there's still some 20 games to play. You know what it means. Hernandez was quoted in the paper here when we got here saying, "I guarantee you will take 2 out of 3. I guarantee you." So that's the kind of feeling they had going in, and then looked like last night the way they were going to win it, maybe even a sweep, and now I mean, they're hanging on by the fingernails.
Indeed, when you start going back, the Mets have seen the Cardinals score 11 runs in their last 4 innings. 4-1. 1-0 the count to Greg Matthews. Then it'll be Vince Coleman and Ozzie Smith. Bouncer off the glove of Leach. Santana is on it to get him.
Again, that might have been unfair, but down there as we watched the replay, I thought that Santana should have had that first ball.
Oh, I did too.
Did you?
Yeah. Definitely. I think the infield is somewhat soft, as we all know, and he was expecting a higher hop on 2 plays and didn't get either one.
From down there, it looked like he was, had plenty of time to get in front of it.
And he had been playing great ball at shortstop. This is probably the first poor game he's played in a while. 1 away, and Vince Coleman coming up. Another thing to think about when the Cardinals came in here, and I'm sure it's one reason why the Mets thought that they were going to catch up. The Mets were getting, as we pointed out, great starting pitching, and the Cardinals were not hitting at all. Ground ball to the hole. There's Santana, and the crowd will get on him a little. 2 down, and Ozzie Smith coming up. In Montreal, when the Cardinals were swept, Cardinals scored only 6 runs in the 3 games and gave up 21. So they came in here on their shields.
If that's what you want to call it. And Whitey had kind of a funny remark. Coleman and McGee got picked off last night, and they asked him if that was the first time he got picked off in the same game. He said, picked off, that's the first time they've been on base in the same game.
Whitey did not manage a game this year. Last Sunday, Whitey spent the entire game in the trainer's room with an inner ear infection. The Cardinals beat San Diego, so that's one win he can't really take pride in. He's a manager who's won well over 1,000, but he was indeed on the Erie. 2-0 the count to Ozzie Smith.
Excuse me? We were cut off there for a minute.
Operator. We certainly were. In there. Ozzie Smith with 1 out in the first inning and 2 strikes. Got a good breaking ball in on the hands and down, and he just pulled it inside first base for the double against Dwight Gooden, and that was the beginning of the end for Dwight. A drive to Mookie Wilson. So the relief pitchers, first Gene Walter and now Terry Leach, do what Gooden couldn't do. They retire the Cardinals in order. 6-0 St. Louis. This day in baseball, Jim Beattie of the Yankees pitching to Carl Yastrzemski at Fenway Park in Baston, and a base hit into right field. And for Carl Yastrzemski, number 3,000 in his career. We go to the bottom of the 4th. 6-0 Cardinals. Darryl Strawberry, Kevin McReynolds, and Gary Carter. Strawberry grounded out in the first inning, 0 for 1. Mets had a brief rally in the 3rd. Didn't last long after a base hit and a walk. Tuffle hit into a force play, and Hernandez hit into the double play. Foul back. Montreal defeated Chicago 7-1. Show you what kind of a bad day it would be for the Mets should the Cardinals win. The Mets, who are talking first place, would fall into 3rd place since Montreal has already defeated Chicago. Check swing, and another fielded by Pena, who throws him out. Tony Pena, another Gold Glove down on the field, and there are quite a few of them. Pena has won 3 Gold Gloves. Gary Carter has won 3 Gold Gloves. Willie McGee has won 3. Ozzie Smith 7, and Keith Hernandez 9.
Once again, that area in front of home played really hard. That ball got up there. Pena, he made a pretty good play out of it.
McReynolds singled on Terry Pendleton's glove. He's 1 for 1. Once again, we'll remind our viewers we'll be selecting the NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game at the conclusion of the ballgame. Fastball picked up the corner. 1-1.
Big kid McReynolds, about how fast he showers and even timing. He showered and got out of after a game in 11 minutes.
What's that old expression they used to say? Hurry out of the locker room, you hurry out of baseball?
Joe McCarthy's supposed to have said it.
Yeah.
But I like McReynolds a lot for a lot of reasons. He's honest. He says, you know, when you get right down, I'm kind of a boring guy. He is not, but that's what he says.
2-2. McReynolds has hit in 8 straight with that base hit in the 2nd inning, so that's not boring.
I tell you, he can play.
It's a fly ball into right center. John Morris is there. But quickly, 2 out in the 4th inning. It's still 6-0 St. Louis. And Gary Carter coming up.
Gary Carter.
Gary Carter, who would appear to be ready to play every game between now and the end of the season. He plays night followed by day, where normally you'd figured he'd have a day off, but I think he's in for the duration. Carter flied to center in the 2nd inning. Half a dozen home runs, 25 RBIs in his last 39 games. As you see, Atlanta leading the Dodgers 4-1 in the 2nd. Fouled away. And although there are people in New York who feel that Gary Carter has had a very disappointing year, 18 home runs, 73 RBIs, you can see one reason, because his average has been down, down, and down some more. But when you put him up against other catchers in the National League, he's pretty much holding his own despite having that low batting average. He has as many home runs last we saw as Jody Davis. Ossie Virgil has hit more, but he hit about 20 of them before the All-Star break. Now back.
Vin, and this is objective when I say this. I really mean it. I really don't feel you should judge a catcher on statistics like home runs, batting average, how many games you play when your hands are beat up and your legs are sore. And yet there's that intangible of handling pitchers and blocking the plate and blocking balls. Nobody ever talks about that. They look and they go, oh, he only hit this. That's wrong.
Sure. He's only missed 20 games. And Frank Pulley is going to punch him out on an off-speed pitch, half swing for strike 3. And at the end of 4, it's Cardinals 6 and the Mets nothing. And we'll be right back after these messages from your local station.
That last pitch, watch Gary Carter now. He draws it back and he knows it's a ball. I mean, it's going to be another chance. What? I can't believe this. He looks for help from McSherry, who says, hey. What a reaction, huh?
So Gary Carter striking out to end the 4th, and into the 5th inning we go. 6-0 St. Louis, and that's ball 1 to Tommy Herr. The Cardinals, even though they are leading 6-0, they can't take anything for granted because they have dissipated some pretty good leads, and especially late in the game. Drive down the left field line, slicing foul. Since the All-Star break, and admittedly the Cardinals have not been playing well since the break, but since the All-Star break, the Cardinals have lost 14 games where they were tied or ahead in the 7th inning or later. Terry Leach, the 3rd Mets pitcher. Gooden, Walter, and now Leach. Breaking ball strike 1 and 2. Tommy Herr, for more than a month, has been hitting right around 290.
I would think a guy like Leach, you'd go to the opposite field with him because he throws that sinker with that submarine delivery. Try to pull him, it'd be a ground ball to the second baseman.
And he hits another one down that left field line foul, so it's still 1 and 2. The Cardinals and the Mets. Well, back in April in St. Louis, the Cardinals swept 3, but they lost John Tudor when Barry Lyons went flying into the dugout. And in April in New York, the Cardinals won 2 out of 3, so they had won 5 out of 6 from a Mets team that was reeling from all kinds of problems and injuries.
There's a bag blown on the infield. Hernandez is going to try to get it. He started after it. Tuffle says it's not bothering me. Her is bothering him, so there you see it. $1 million rag picker right there.
Tuffle gave him that look like waiters give in a restaurant. It's not my table. 1 and 2 to Tommy Herr. 6-0 St. Louis in the 5th. Mean sinker down and in. 2 balls and 2 strikes. They're going to check at 3rd. No swing, says Terry Tata.
And Carter says, well, you called it on me. And McSherry's got to stand there and listen to it.
Herr today has walked and singled. Fouled away. That's another thing that had to bother Dwight Gooden. With 1 out in the 1st inning, Ozzie Smith doubled, but that's no surprise because Ozzie hits Gooden very well. But Herr doesn't. Herr's hitting 178 against Gooden, and he walked him. The pitcher's spot is due up 3rd for the Mets when they hit in the bottom of the 5th. So Leach figures to be pitching his last inning, and Bobby Ojeda is back up in the bullpen. Here's Bobby Ojeda. Operated on his left elbow May the 23rd. He's made a rather remarkable comeback. Sinker, and it's pulled to Hernandez. He'll underhand to Leach. 1 away. We told you that Montreal had beaten the Cubs 7-1. There's the line. With Pascual Perez, the winner, and Jamie Moyer, the loser. So as you can see, the Expos and the Mets are technically tied. But if the Mets lose, Montreal will go right over them. And now, a rather quick move with Danny Dreesen coming up. Davey Johnson is going to bring in the left-hander, and that means a 2-for-1 switch, because otherwise he'd be just about wasting it. And Barry Lyons is going to take over behind the plate. So Barry Lyons is going. Lyons, the new Mets catcher, and Barry will bat 9th. Bobby Ojeda the new pitcher, he will go in Gary Carter's spot. So with left-handers back-to-back, Dreesen and McGee, although McGee switches, Davy Johnson decided to take Carter out. Really, that's what happened.
That's it.
And that, in a sense, gives you another insight. With the Cardinals leading 6-0, Carter suddenly becomes a spectator. So Dreesen walked and a board on an error. And the count 0-2. Bobby Ojeda, an 18-game winner, who finished 4th in the Cy Young Award last year. He led the National League in winning percentage, and he was second to Mike Scott in earned run averages. But he came up with a bad elbow, and he had surgery performed May the 23rd. Ojeda pitched 2 innings of relief Tuesday night. That was the first time he'd been in a game since the 9th of May, and he did very well in the 2 innings. He allowed just 1 hit. Ojeda, last year, as good as he was, an 18-game winner, he had a lot of trouble in his first inning. So here he is in relief, and this really is his first inning. Fouled away. Big crowd here at Shea, and there'll be another big crowd tomorrow. Danny Cox and David Cone, as the Mets drawing 2.6 million and heading for the 3 million mark. And the Cardinals might do it too. Remember, the Cardinals have 14 games at home left. Up flying to shallow center. Tuffle is there. Wind blowing it. 2 down. So the relief pitching has been excellent. 8 in a row retired by the relief pitchers. Walter, Leach, and now Ojeda. That's the big reason why the Mets have struggled. What has happened to the big 4 of Darling, Gooden, Fernandez, and make it big 5, Ojeda and Aguilera. Gooden missing 11 starts, but let's be honest, it was his own fault. 0-1 the count to Willie McGee, who walked and hit into a double play. Well, Willie McGee to walk is news. When he walked in the first inning, he had only walked 20 times all year. 1-1.
I think there's 2 things that Willie McGee has trouble with: walking and running out home runs. He really almost like he's embarrassed when he hits them.
And he hardly ever. I think he's walked 8 times as a right-handed batter. It's a high fly ball to right center. Again, the wind will bring it back towards Mookie Wilson. So it's another 1-2-3 inning, but the horse is way down the road at the end of 4.5, 6-0 Cardinals. Here's another edition of Baseball Remembered. 6-0, as you know, but of course they can't really feel that strongly about Greg Matthews. He has only 2 complete games in 50 career starts.
That would tell you something, but the way he's pitching also tells you something. You can see Rourke is watching him. Whitey's already had Forsh up there. You get behind those hitters, you're just flirting.
The big thing, of course, for the Cardinals to get out of here, get off the road, and get home. And the one incentive that the Mets have is to stay close, because remember, the Mets and the Cardinals play the last 3 games of the regular season in St. Louis. For the Mets, trying to get off the floor in the 5th inning, Howard Johnson, Rafael Santana, and then Barry Lyons. Right. 1-1. Johnson flied to right field in the 2nd inning. Greg Matthews, in his 27 previous starts, the Cardinals won 12 and lost 15. Greg pitching a big game today. 1-1. High fly ball into left field. Going back and having a play all the way is Vince Coleman. That was never in doubt. 1 down.
Shortstop.
Greg Matthews shaking his head. I think he felt he got away with something on that pitch. Not only did he get it up, but he got it up into that wind, but it still didn't go anywhere. Rafael Santana flied to right field in the second inning, 0 for 1. Little nubber up along third. Tough play. Pendleton gloves, throws, and got him. Interesting, too, that Pendleton fielded that ball with a glove. A lot of third basemen would not want to waste the time of transferring the ball from the glove to the bare hand.
Charges it well. Could have even been one of those you let it roll, but he just scoops it up and close play, but got him.
Fine play by Terry Pendleton.
That's the one thing Whitey talks about. When you got a guy like Pendleton, Smith on that side, and you got a guy like McGee in center field, base on balls and run you right to the water cooler.
Well, here's Barry Lyons, who did more than run Whitey to the water cooler. Remember when Barry was chasing that ball way back in April when the Cardinals swept, and Lyons, in chasing a foul ball, went sliding into the Cardinal dugout in a collision with John Tudor, and Tudor suffered the broken leg. Line drive right at Ozzie Smith, and that's the inning. So the Mets go quietly. That's 8 in a row retired by Greg Matthews. And at the end of 5, Cardinals 6 and the Mets nothing. Hey, NBC Sports kicking off a doubleheader with NFL Live at 12:30 Eastern. And you can join us. Miami, the Dolphins travel to New England to battle the Patriots. The second half, most people will see football's million-dollar man, the Boz, Brian Bosworth. He'll battle John Elway when the Denver Broncos host the Seattle Seahawks. The folks in New York will see the Jets play Buffalo, plus regional action. So be sure to check your local listings for the games and times in your area right here on NBC Sports.
The Boz.
The Boz. I don't think there's a stadium big enough for Brian Bosworth and Jim McMahon.
Man, get that big mustard jar. I mean that industrial strength mustard jar for a hot dog.
Terry Pendleton takes a strike. He had a scoring fly ball and flied to right. Terry 0 for 1. Bob Ojeda pitching this second inning. For the Cardinals, their last base hit was Tommy Hurst's single in the second inning. The last base runner was Dreesen, who reached on an error. The last 10 in a row have been retired. Foul ball. You know, since divisional play began in 1969, and if you discount the strike short in 1981 season, 81% of the teams in first place or tied for first on the 1st of September survived the stretch one and won the division. 81%. One hopper into right field, base hit. The greatest comeback, the 74 Orioles. The Orioles in 74, as we see, they lost today. In 1974, they were in third place, 6 games behind on September 1st. They won 25 out of 31 and went on right by the Red Sox and the Yankees. The next best would be the 73 Mets. They were 5.5 out in 5th place on September the 1st. They won 20 out of 28 to leapfrog over the Expos, Cubs, and Pirates and passed the Cardinals at the end of the season. Since 1969, all 34 first-place clubs with a 4.5-game lead or more on the first won their division. Only one of 5 teams folded with a team of 4 games on the 1st of September. That was the 69 Cubs. So I guess what we're saying, history is definitely against the New York Mets. Pendleton at first. John Morris 1 for 2 at the plate.
He really wasn't sure to sign. He gave Nick Levy a real good look.
At the chin, a throw down, not in time.
That's good play by Barry Lyons, because that play was not a planned play to the extent that they put on the play. Hernandez gets back to and takes the throw, and it gets pretty close. They had Pendleton leaning.
The old story, though, he made the tag by way of foul ground, and I've never seen a runner caught yet with the tag coming by way of foul territory. 2-1.
Morris shortened up as if to bunt. It's a 6-0 ball game. We're in the 6th, trying to pick up another one.
Two and two. The count to John Morris. Nobody out in the 6th inning. Cardinals 6 runs, 6 hits. The Mets, no runs, only 2 hits. McReynolds singled off Pendleton's glove in the 2nd. Mark Carrion singled to center in the 3rd. That's it. Slicing foul off 3rd, and the wind should blow that way back into the crowd. Two and two. High fly ball into right field. Strawberry going back to the track and makes the catch. Tagging his Pendleton, but just to draw the throw. He had no idea of going. So Morris, a fly ball to right. Pendleton holding, and Tony Pena coming up. You know, we mentioned the crowd, and certainly the crowd is part of the story. In 70 dates, the Mets have drawn 2.6 million. In 69 dates, the Dodgers have drawn 2.5 million. And in 65 dates, St. Louis has drawn 2.5 million. Now, that's rather remarkable for the city of St. Louis, and figuring that they're averaging over 38,000 a game, and the Cardinals have 14 games at home, they might do it. All of the 3 million attendance marks were established by the Dodgers, but now some clubs getting close. And Tim Tuffle making a nice play on that foul ball. 2 down.
Looked like Strawberry might have some problems, so Tuffle took charge. He took a good look to see where he was, got some help in the wind, and makes the play.
Cardinals pitcher Greg Matthews.
So Greg Matthews coming up. Flied to right, grounded to short, 0 for 2. Pendleton holding at first with 2 out in the 6th inning, 6-0 St. Louis. And if you're not keeping score and you wonder about the Mets, Mookie Wilson, Tim Tuffle, and Keith Hernandez, 2 up in the bottom of the 6th. Foul back. The count to Greg Matthews. Matthews, a switch hitter. If you're not a switch hitter, you can't play for St. Louis, I think. Boy. And a shot up the middle, flagged by Santana, and he hangs it for Tuffle to get the force on Pendleton, and that's it. No runs, a hit, a man left, and at the end of 5.5, Cardinals 6 and the Mets nothing. So far, it has certainly been a dreadful day for New York. Look what Toronto is doing to the Yankees. Consecutive home runs by Witt, Barfield, and Gruber. 13-1 Toronto in the 9th. So Toronto could be 7 games in front of the Yankees.
Ben Matthews in 5 innings has only made 68 pitches. That's a pace of 122. How about the Valenzuela, the number of pitches he's made?
Yeah, he was in the 160s again last night. Mookie Wilson struck out and walked. He's 0 for 1. 6-0 St. Louis, bottom of the 6th inning. Little number over the mound. Ozzie coming in a hurry, can't make the play, and Mookie's going to keep on going into second. You know, Mookie almost had the opportunity of having a triple on that.
I was looking for him to make the turn because Pendleton had gone to second base to back it up. Watch how high that ball hits in front of the plate once again. Up she goes. No play from Matthews. Ozzie can't come up with it. And Pendleton moves over to cover second base. And if he'd got another step closer, I think Mookie would have outrun him to third base.
Yeah, that would have been something to see. Well, as it is, it's a slow roller for a double, and Tim Tuffle takes the strike. Oh, and 1 to count to Tuffle, followed by Hernandez and Strawberry. 6-0 Cardinals. Fly ball to center field. Willie McGee is there. Mookie to the bag to tag. McGee for the catch, but Wilson holding on a perfect throw to the cutoff man, Ozzie Smith. 1 down.
That makes your ball club look good when that happens. He fires it to Ozzie Smith like that.
And how? Nothing like hitting the cutoff man. You're looking at a man who's won 3 Gold Gloves. He can go get them, and then he knows what to do when he gets them. Cleveland giving Minnesota a bad time. The Twins began the day 3.5 in front of Oakland, but the Indians knocked them over. And you can see Oakland, for the moment at least, 3 back. Oakland at home with Kansas City. Keith Hernandez flied to right, hit into a double play, 0 for 2. You know, we talked before about the fact the Cardinals have 14 games remaining at home. One of the things the Mets are hoping to do is beat up on 2 teams they have already given a bad time. They have 9 games left with the Phillies and the Pirates. And they're 21-6 against those 2 teams. Ground ball to short. Ozzie will go to first as Wilson goes to third. This will give you an idea of how it looks down the stretch. The games remaining. 4 times against each other, meaning that the Cardinals and Mets play here tomorrow and then 3 on the last 3 days of the season. Tomorrow, Danny Cox and David Cohn. To Strawberry, trying to pick up Wilson from third with 2 out, and he hits a fly ball to left field. Vince Coleman and Terry Pendleton, and the wind blowing it, and Coleman makes the catch. Fine play, and that's it for the Mets. No runs, a hit, a man left at third, and at the end of 6-0 Cardinals. We're back after these messages.
Here's the replay. Now, Coleman looks like he's going to make an easy play out of it. That wind, and he almost thought about a collision. Really had to outrun it. Now, watch what he does with the ball. He gives it to that youngster, and that's got to be about 15 votes for the All-Star game.
You know, I always get a kick. The home club supplies the balls, right?
Right.
So the visiting player comes in and he gives them away. It's like inviting somebody to your house and he takes the silverware. You know, so thank you very much. Big man with your stuff.
Let me check your suitcase for hotel towels.
Right. Here's Vince Coleman. Everybody's hitting it nice. Coleman, Smith, and Her in the 7th. 6-0 St. Louis. One thing about this game, we're talking about, it's the worst game for Gooden, certainly the shortest he ever pitched, 2 innings and 6 runs allowed. There's really only been 1 laugher between the Cardinals and the Mets in the 13. And even that one wasn't. It went 10 innings, and the Cardinals won by 4 runs. So today, for them to have a lopsided 6-0 lead is really news. 1 ball and 1 strike. 2-1 the count to Vince. Struck out, single, stole a base, and scored and grounded out. So he has a base hit in all 5 games on the road trip. And what a remarkable leadoff man. Really remarkable. He has a base hit today, and it means he has been on base either by a hit or a walk in 121 of the 131 games he's played. Now that's a leadoff man. Fouled away.
I tell you, it's amazing when you see it like that in black and white, but it just didn't happen. Here's a guy who last winter just spent every day going to the ballpark, running, going to the ballpark, working off the tee. He and Tito Landrum. He worked at it.
He picked up his 99th stolen base of the year in the 2nd inning. 99. And there's ball 4, so look out now.
And here comes 100 coming up, just like room service.
You know, he hasn't gone more than 7 games without a stolen base, and that was way back in May and early June. And a lot of times when he steals second, he's not through. He'll steal third. So one of the great runners in the game is at first, and Ozzie Smith, the hitter. Vince Coleman has stolen second and third in the same inning twice. Well, let's see. 12 times this year, 37 times in his career. So look out now if he feels like running. There he goes. The pitch, a strike, the throw on a bounce, too late. And that is number 100. 100 stolen bases for Vince Coleman. A remarkable weapon.
He got picked off the other night off second base because he was trying to get that extra step. But it's been just mentioned he'd rather run off second base than first. It's not even close. Lyon had a good ball to handle. Straight down, and here he comes. He's one of those guys that also picks up speed when he hits the dirt.
Some applause in the background. They put it up on the board. Stolen base number 100. First time in history any player has stolen 100 in his first 3 major league seasons. But to put it in the proper perspective, when you think about the greatest base stealer, I guess you'd say Lou Brock over an extended period of time. Ozzie sacrifices, and Coleman is at third, and that'll bring up Tommy Herr. But Brock averaged 52 stolen bases a year, so this guy's averaging 100.
And it's amazing when you see the way they do it. I mean, it's a consistency. In the second inning, Coleman walked, stole second. Ozzie Smith bunted. He's at third with 1 man out. 7th inning, walks. Steal. It's like a blueprint for a run.
And leading 6-0, the Cardinals with a chance to pick up another, and the only thing the Mets can do is play the infield up. It's too late in the game to be giving up any more. 4-1. Tommy Herr walks, single, grounded out. 1 for 2.
And he's going to put the ball in play. You know that. And they do everything. I mean, Herr takes a good long look at Levitt on the third, and as soon as you see that as the defense, you got to say to yourself, they're not going to put a squeeze on, are they? But at least they got you thinking.
The other thought is that Tommy Herr leads the league in scoring fly balls. Fouled away. You might think it's kind of easy to go up there and hack a fly ball to get a man home. Well, he leads the league with 9. Tommy Herr with Dan Dreesen on deck. Cardinals 6 runs, 6 hits. Mets no runs, 3 hits. Mets have had just 2 men get to third base. Boy, did he fool him with that fastball. That wasn't much of a swing.
No, he didn't think that was going to be that hard. Ojeda got it out of the strike zone, a high fastball, which is an easy ball for the fly ball, but the way he threw it, where he threw it, too tough for Tommy.
1 ball and 2 strikes to Tommy Herr. Well, a fly ball to right center. Mookie is there, tagging up is Coleman. The throw to the plate, a mere echo. Well, there it is, fly ball.
This is what I'm going to call the Vin Scully bitten by a moth run.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You don't feel it. He walked, stole second, went to third on a bunt, and scores on a sacrifice fly. They got to run, and nobody's got to time it back.
I said, you okay? He nods and his head falls off.
That's right. As soon as he moves his head, boom, down it goes. You don't feel it. You take a step and kneecap falls. Unbelievable. That's a typical perfect Cardinal run.
Yep, eaten to death by an angry moth. The Cardinals picking up the nicest run you'd ever want. 7-0 St. Louis, and Dan Dreesen 4-1. 1-0. Danny has walked, aboard on the error, and popped up 0 for 2. And he lips one to Strawberry, who started back. And that's it. But very quietly, the Cardinals pick up another. And at the end of 6.5, 7-0 St. Louis. Now here's another edition of the 7th inning stretch. Vince Coleman be our guest. Friends, this telecast presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. It has been all St. Louis in the first inning with Dwight Gooden pitching. Davy Johnson sat back and watched Gooden strike out Vince Coleman, and the crowd was roaring. And before you knew it, the Cardinals had 5. Smith doubled, Herr walked, Dreesen walked to load the bases, McGee walked to force in a run, Pendleton's fly ball picked up a run, Morris singled in 2, and then Pena knocked in the 5th run of the inning. And ever since, the Mets have been trying to play catch up, and they haven't been able to do it. Kevin McReynolds, then a hitter for Bobby Ojeda. And then Howard Johnson. On deck, Randy Milligan, another youngster brought up by the Mets. Moose, as they call him. Milligan on deck. Foul ball out of play. You know, another thing, we were talking about history before, and how history really favors the team in first place since divisional play. September the 1st on, 81% hold on to win the division. Another thing that has to bother the Mets, in the 26 years that the Mets have been playing, they've had only 8 winning Septembers. 3 of them came in the last 3 years when they became contenders and eventually champions. 2 others were winning years, 1969 and 73. Otherwise, this franchise has not done well in the last month of the season. Fouled away. One and 2 to Kevin McReynolds, who singled and flied to right. He's hit in 8 straight. Very businesslike. Greg Matthews going about his work. 2 and 2. The only jam that Matthews has been in, and you can't really call it that much of a jam when he's leading 6-0, but it was in the 3rd inning when Carrion singled and Wilson walked with nobody out. And Tuffle hit into the force play. Hernandez hit into the double play, and that was that. And that's looped into right field, and it will fall in front of John Morris for a base hit. So McReynolds opens up with a base hit, and the batter will be Milligan hitting for Ojeda. Well, the Blue Jays polished off the Yankees 13-1. And the Blue Jays have really pushed the Yankees back now, so that they are tied with Milwaukee, 7 back. They are really in an also-ran position now. Randy Milligan had a big year at Tidewater, 29 home runs and 103 RBIs. A spinner for a strike. 0-1. Boy, what big numbers for Randy Milligan. Milligan with those numbers, MVP in the International League. And the count 0-2. With the runner going to pitch in the dirt, so McReynolds, with the door open, decides to just take it.
Well, they gave it to him. They gave it to him about 3 pitches ago. Dreesen was a little bit behind him, but Matthews wasn't paying that much attention to him. And you see Dreesen and McReynolds, he sees that Matthews not even giving him a look, and he just looked back to see if Milligan was going to take a hack at it.
1-2 to Milligan. Still 1-2. Milligan, the second Mets pinch hitter. They've already used 4 pitchers: Gooden, Walter, Leach, and Ojeda. And the Cardinals breaking the game wide up in the second inning and been leading handily ever since. Doug Sisk down in the Mets pen. He'll be pitching in the 8th inning. 1-2. 2-2. There's Doug Sisk. Got him, and that looked like a pretty good sinker. The bottom dropped out of it. So Milligan strikes out. Take a look at that pitch.
Looked like he turned it over. He just kind of turned it over a little bit, got it in a real good spot, low. And he gets a big strikeout.
Yeah, threw it pretty hard.
For him, he's been changing speeds, and that's what he has to do. The change of pace sets up that fastball and vice versa.
Howard Johnson flied to right, flied to left. Greg Matthews picking up his 3rd strikeout. He got Mookie Wilson, and he got Gary Carter on a half swing. We told you attendance is very important on this rainy, dismal day in New York. The paid attendance, 47,734, with over 49,000 in the house. The Mets have been averaging a little over 38,000. Ground ball to shortstop. Ozzie looks at third and then decides, no, I'll take the out at first.
He had an idea, though. He doesn't give you anything, Ozzie.
Ozzie Smith, 7 straight Gold Gloves. He is something. He's the best.
Watch him take a look. Ah, well, I'll take it over here.
So for the 3rd time today, the Mets get a runner at third. They had Carrion reach third in the 3rd inning. Wilson reached third in the 6th inning. And now McReynolds is at third in the 7th. Rafael Santana flied to right, grounded to third. 0 for 2. On deck, remember, is the catcher batting 9th, Barry Lyons. A drive down the left field line. Coleman sprinting, can't get it. So the Mets will score, and Santana into second base with a double.
Coleman looked like he was going to make a great play out of it. He gave it all he had, but just couldn't quite get to it.
The Mets have only been shut out 4 times this year, twice at Shea. So they avoid the shutout if nothing else. And the batter now, Barry Lyons, takes ball 1. The Cardinals only shut out twice all year and were not shut out at home so far. 7-1 in favor of the Cardinals. The throw back rolled behind Tommy Herr. It has been so long for the Mets to get a run, they have forgotten to change the score on the scoreboard. I mean, that's when you're really shut out. When you score a run and they still don't put it up there.
I see that Cardinal bullpen. Whitey's not going to fool around either. Get a run. You got 2 of them up there.
Bill Dawley and Bob Forsch. Forsch, the veteran right-hander. Forsch was throwing in the 3rd inning. Fly ball into right field. John Morris. So the Mets manage a run on 2 hits and a stolen base, and at the end of 7, the Cardinals 7 and the Mets 1. Next Saturday, the game of the week, the Toronto Blue Jays will come to Yankee Stadium. They pulverized the Yankees today 13-1 to send them reeling 7 games behind Toronto and Detroit. Those on the West Coast will see the Giants trying to protect their lead against the Cincinnati Reds. It'll all begin with Marv Albert's Major League Baseball and Inside Look. That's next Saturday on NBC Sports. The Giants-Reds game going into action tonight. The Reds are 4 games behind the Giants, and they're hosting them. And that will be Rick Russell and Ted Power. Minnesota lost So Oakland hosting Kansas City, Lee Brandt and Stewart. And if Dave Stewart goes to the mound for Oakland and he's the probable pitcher, he will be trying to win his 20th game.
That's an amazing story.
Oh,
amazing story.
Doug Sisk will become the 5th pitcher used by Davey Johnson. Sisk has been pitching very, very well since the 1st of August. He took a lot of heat for a long time, but his earned run average less than 2 since the 1st of August. Willie McGee will start him off. 4-1. McGee today walked, scored a run, hit into a double play, and flied to center. On the corner, 1-1. McGee has, with all of his speed, has hit into 21 double plays this year, and 14 of them as a left-handed batter, where you think you have the advantage of the extra steps to first. A little roller to Tim Tuffle, 1 away. So McGee goes 0 for 3, but scored in that first inning. And the batter will be Terry Pendleton. McGee scoring because he received a walk, which he rarely gets.
You don't think these Met fans remember last night? Pendleton walks up. Here we are in the 8th inning, and they're booing him because they know what that blast he hit yesterday, what it meant.
Terry Pendleton, and he came right back in the first inning and had a scoring fly ball. Then he flied to right and singled to right. So Pendleton is 1 for 2. 7-1 Cardinals, top of the 8th. A chopper to Tuffle. 2 down in the 8th inning. The Cardinals have scored 1 run against Messrs. Walter, Leach, Ojeda, and Sisk. The run against Bobby Ojeda set up on the walk, stolen base, scoring fly ball. So the relief pitching has been wonderful. But the horse got away in the first 2 innings when Dwight Gooden gave up 6 runs. And meanwhile, Greg Matthews pitching a dandy. Strike. Matthews, who has 2 complete games in his career, 50 starts. One ball and 1 strike to count. Whitey Herzog watching the Mets almost come back from the edge. And then pushing them over. 1-2. History of the New York Mets. And of course, if they really hit the skids, that will be the one they'll be talking about. Another fine inning. This one by Doug Hitt, that at the end of 7.5, 7-1 Cardinals. 7-1 Cardinals, bottom of the 8th inning. We'll check the scores that we have. Boston defeated Baltimore 4-3. Cleveland upended Minnesota 5-4. Toronto did a number on the Yankees 13-1. Toronto, of course, with Detroit idle for the moment. Toronto in first place, a half a game over Detroit, and the Yankees back by 7. Meanwhile, Montreal defeated Chicago 7-1. If the Cardinals beat the Mets, Montreal will climb over New York. Mookie Wilson, ball 1. Mookie struck out, walked, and then hit the little dribbler under Ozzie Smith's glove and legged it into a double. Got to third and stayed there. Big chopper to the hole. Backhanded, quick delivery by Ozzie. Not in time, and it got away from Dreesen. And boy, look at the hustle on Tony Pena.
He was down there.
Wow.
He chased it down before a fan could grab it. Good hustle.
Be an infield single, as you see, and marvel at how quickly Ozzie gets rid of the ball.
Braces himself, but he couldn't get a whole lot on that throw. Short hop. Dreesen couldn't come up with it, and he starts to chase it, but Pena's there to back him up.
So an infield single for Mookie Wilson. That is hit number 5 for New York. And Tim Tuffle, the batter, walked, hit into a force play, and flied to center. So Tuffle 0 for 2. Strike. 7-1 St. Louis, bottom of the 8th inning. Well, we talked about the fact Oakland could capitalize because Minnesota lost, and they're losing 5-0. And we assume that that's Dave Stewart pitching that game, trying to win his 20th and down 5 early. Tuffle followed by Keith Hernandez. Fouled away. 1-2. Mookie Wilson held on by Dan Dreesen. Check swing comebacker. Matthews to her to Dreesen. So the check bounces. Double play. 1-4-3.
When you have that indecision at the plate, that's what usually happens. You start, stop, and you're in trouble. He starts to swing, holds up, and for a minute it looked like Matthews didn't know who was covering because he really doesn't give her a good ball to handle. He throws it to the shortstop side, but he had so much time that it was really an easy play.
So Keith Hernandez coming up. Flied to right, hit into a double play, grounded out. Strike. Davy Johnson and Mel Stottlemyre, who look forward to this series. The Cardinals were reeling out of Montreal. Jack Clark was hurt. There's a little dunker to center. Coming up is McGee. Going out is Ozzie to pick it off. And just like that, the Mets are done in the 8th inning. No runs, 1 hit. And at the end of 8, Cardinals 7, Mets 1. We've reached the 9th inning with the Cardinals leading the Mets handily 7-1. Doug Sisk will be pitching to Tony Pena, Greg Matthews, and Vince Coleman. Whitey Herzog just leaning back, enjoying what would appear to be a 3.5 game lead over New York.
Tony Pena.
One more game in the series tomorrow. Danny Cox and David Cone. Strike. 0-1. Tony Pena singled to right, flied to right, and fouled out to right when Tim Tuffle went down the line and made a fine play. Breaking ball pulled back a third, foul ball. 0-2. If you weren't with us earlier, we haven't mentioned it, I guess, since the 1st inning. The Mets got some very bad news. Breaking ball chased, and down goes Pena. The bad news was the result of last night's accident when Ron Darling was hurt trying to field a bunt. And Darling has been lost for the year.
Pena swings at that ball like he was ordered by a judge to swing at that. You better swing at this because it was way out of the strike zone.
Tony 1 for 4 as he goes back to the dugout, and here's Greg Matthews 0 for 3, taken all away. When the Mets bat in the bottom of the 9th, they'll have Darryl Strawberry, Kevin McReynolds, and then Sisk's spot. Slow roller to Tuffle. And Matthews just jogging down the line. Can understand it. He's had 2 complete games in his career, 50 starts, and he is 3 outs away from a complete game in a very big game. Vince Coleman coming up, struck out, singled, grounded out, and walked. He has 2 stolen bases, 2 runs scored. And on deck, Ozzie Smith. Bouncer up the middle, Santana. Bad throw, and you could have had a serious injury. That's a first baseman's nightmare, because that ball really sailed into the runner, and Hernandez had to lean right in as Coleman was going by.
And that's what the Cardinals do with the speed. The defense is on edge. Santana knows he's got to get rid of that ball in a hurry. A little bit off balance as he throws it, and Hernandez tries to reach it, and Coleman makes it very close as it is. I tell you, they got you on edge, man. Speed, speed, speed.
Be an error charged against Rafael Santana, his second of the day. Now let's see if Coleman decides to do any more running with the Cardinals leading 7-1. Remember, he stole second when they were leading 6-0. Vince, 100 stolen bases.
I think you can almost pick a pitch.
Strike. Ozzie Smith doubled and sacrificed, fly to center and sacrificed. Cardinals had 108 sacrifices last year, and that's a basic part of the attack. You get the stolen base, then you sacrifice.
Here's where I would think he'd be going, right here. 1 ball, 1 strike if he's going to run this time.
On the corner, 1-2. Seven-1 Cardinals, 2 out, top of the 9th. Coleman doesn't go, outside.
He could have gone any one of the last 3 times if he wanted to.
Little chopper foul out of play. What's the bottom line in your mind and in your heart? For instance, he's a base stealer, and he stole with the Cardinals leading 6-0. What's the bottom line when you're showing up a team, do you think? Is there such a thing? I mean, other teams will get mad if you steal, but what do you think is the score that good sense says, hey, no more running?
I tell you, I have a funny feeling about that now. I don't think any score.
Well, I notice he's not going. There's a base hit into right, so Coleman will breeze to third.
I think on that 2-2, it was almost as if to say, well, he's going to have to run 3-2, so why don't I just stay here anyhow? I don't think it's a case of showing up. It used to be that. I know when in my day it used to be that way, 5-6 runs ahead. Like now they say you're showing me up. But I think that guys like Maury Wills and Lou Brock, they changed all that, and I agree with it. I mean, a guy still tries to hit a home run. Why would a guy stealing the base show you up?
Tommy Herr has walked and singled, grounded out, and then his specialty in the 7th inning after Coleman had walked, stolen second, taken third on a ground ball sacrificed by Ozzie Smith. By Tommy Herr hit his 10th scoring fly ball. Herr hitting .269, and Doug Sisk trying to get the last out in the 9th inning. 1-1. And that's whacked into left field for a base hit. That gets the run in, and it is 8-1 St. Louis. So the Cardinals doing everything right and then taking advantage of whatever mistake the Mets make.
And they force you into mistakes, as Coleman forced Santana into a hurried throw, got the air, and boom, he scored.
You ever notice how a manager, the losing manager, seems smaller? you look in the dugout, see Davey Johnson sitting there. He looks so much smaller than he did in the 1st inning before the Cardinals started to score. It's almost like the incredible shrinking man. Line drive at Santana, that's it. But it is 2 base hits and an error for 1 more run. And at the end of 8.5 innings, 8-1 Cardinals. St. Louis Cardinals putting on a show at Shea as they lead the Mets handily 8-1. For all intents and purposes, They shut the Mets down in the first inning when they scored 5. New York will have Darryl Strawberry, Kevin McReynolds, and then a hitter for Sisk. Strawberry 0 for 3. Grounded to second, topped the ball out in front of the plate. Pena threw him out. Last time up, flied to left. One ball and no strikes. The story today is Greg Matthews. Matthews, who was born in Harbor City, California, went to Savannah High School in Anaheim, went to Santa Ana Junior College, Cal State Fullerton, and he is really doing a job today, trying to come up with his second complete game of the year and the third of his career. Strike. Matthews, only 25 years old. It's interesting, he's gotten 8 runs to work with today. Last year, he did not get many runs at all every time he pitched. Ground ball to Dreesen. That will do it for Strawberry. 1 away. So Strawberry goes 0 for 4, and Kevin McReynolds with 2 singles and 3 trips coming up.
Kevin McReynolds.
Kevin with 2 hits, a stolen base, scored the only run, and he has hit in 8 straight. Kevin Elster is on deck. So back-to-back Kevins. A drive into left. Going back is Coleman to pick it off. And the Mets now are down to their last out. 2 out in the 9th, 8-1 in favor of the Cardinals. Friends, the executive producer of NBC Sports, Michael Weissman, the coordinating producer of NBC's baseball, and the director of today's game, Harry Coyle. Today's game produced by George Finkel. Pre-game produced by Steve Dance. Kevin Elster had a fine year, as you can see, at Tidewater. And hits one into shallow left. Ozzie going out, but it's going to drop. So a 2-out single by Kevin Elster. That'll bring up Howard Johnson. So 2 of the Mets pinch hitters have come off the bench to get base hits. Mark Carrion and Kevin Elster. Howard Johnson flied to right, flied to left, grounded to short. Howard 0 for 3.
You can see a donut on his right thumb. That's what Howard Johnson went down to get from Elster. Elster used it and then flipped it to Howard Johnson.
1 ball and no strikes. 8-1 Cardinals, 2 out in the 9th. So the Cardinals 1 out away from increasing their lead over the Mets to 3.5, and there's a base hit. Montreal would move into second place and trail the Cardinals by 3.
It's one of those days in the bullpen. If you're in the Cardinal bullpen, it's really a yo-yo day. You're up and you're down and you're up and you're down.
Yeah. Bob Forsch up for the 3rd time. He threw in the 3rd inning, in the 7th inning, and now in the 9th inning. So 2 on, 2 out, and here's Santana. Now that Montreal will move past the Mets, you might be wondering, well, Montreal now will furnish a challenge to the Cardinals. They have 4 games left, and they trail by 3. 1 ball and 1 strike. And Montreal plays the Cardinals very tough. Montreal has beaten the Cardinals 10 out of 14 and 4 out of 5 in St. Louis. They have 4 left because they had a rainout game. Santana flied to right, grounded to third, double to left to drive in a run. Two and one to count.
I tell you, Pena's going out there just to settle him down because Whitey, he's top stepping it just about. He's walking around pacing. Here comes Mike Rourke again. Got to throw some strikes.
Herzog looking at the lineup to see who would be available for the Mets. But remember, Barry Lyons bats ninth. Nick Leva, his third base coach, standing to Whitey's right. And Mike Rourke heading back for the dugout. 2 balls and 1 strike to Rafael Santana. But what a long day. In fact, it must have been a long night for Davey. 2 and 1. Fastball, and the count 2 and 2. 8 runs, 8 hits for the Cardinals. 1 run, 8 hits, and 2 errors for the Mets. Fly ball to right, and this should do it. John Morris with her coming out to one-handed. So the Mets leave 2 in the 9th, and down they go. And the Cardinals 8 runs, 8 hits, no errors. The Mets 1 run, 8 hits, 2 errors. Greg Matthews' 3rd complete game in his career, the 2nd this year, and a bitter defeat, not only to beat the Mets, but to knock them into 3rd place, because Montreal won. They're a half a game ahead of New York, 3 games behind St. Louis. For the Mets and the Cardinals, they'll meet tomorrow with Danny Cox and David Cohn. They will also play 3 games at the last 3 games of the season. But Montreal now is the horse to keep an eye on, coming up on the inside, and they have 4 left with the Cardinals. We'll be back right after this. Today's NBC Miller Lite player of the game is pitcher Greg Matthews. Miller Lite happy to present a check for $1,000 in the name of Greg Matthews to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. And when Matthews won today, it was rather historic. Not only his 3rd complete game in his career, but it was such a bad day for Dwight Gooden. When you look, you can see that his earned run average is twice as high in day games. Admittedly, it was a dark day game. And for Gooden, his earliest departure and the first time he's had back-to-back losses since May of '85. More after this. The Major League Baseball game of the week has been brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft, cold-filtered draft beer. It's as real as it gets. By Buick and your Buick dealers. Buick, where better really matters. By the Prudential, offering a full range of insurance and other financial services. And by Embassy Suites Hotels, where you get a beautiful 2-room suite for the price of a single room. We'll be back with our special guest, pitcher Greg Matthews, and more after these messages from your local station. The day in our guest Greg Matthews, 3rd complete game in his young career, 2nd of the year. They got to be dancing in the streets in an area in Anaheim, I'm sure, Greg.
Oh, I sure hope so.
How did it feel today?
Well, today, early off, I had little mechanical problems that Mike and I discussed that I was overthrowing. And then once I corrected that and kept my front shoulder in, things started to happen.
Greg, Mike, we were watching him. He kind of did a little charade where he snapped himself back like you were throwing the ball stiff back. Was that pretty much it?
Yeah, that basically when I got to the top of my delivery, I'd fly open, which would give me a long arm instead of keeping it closed and keeping the arm short, which I have better control that way.
He even talked to you after the game. What were you talking about then?
I guess just with a 7-run lead to nail it down and go at the hitters. Even though we have a big lead, just don't throw fastballs in there.
Hey, Greg, I know Daniel in the Lions' Den. Did you feel a little bit like that? After all, you hadn't won in your last 5 starts on the road, and you were coming into Shea Stadium and against Dwight Gooden. Did you feel maybe pumped up a little more than normal?
Oh, I definitely did, because I know these 3 games are so important for us to get back on the winning track. And I did have a little bad streak of losing, and I just wanted to turn it around today.
Greg, can you describe for us what the feeling was on the bench after Pendleton hit the home run and what it was like in the clubhouse and coming out today?
Well, I was charting the game, so I was behind home plate. But after the game, it was like we just won the World Series. Everybody was jumping up and down, and it was just a great feeling.
not to bring any dark clouds over what should be a very happy atmosphere, but Montreal is hanging doggedly on your heels. They won today. Montreal plays you awfully tough. They've beaten you 10 out of 14, and you still have 4, so you can't just concentrate on the Mets.
Oh, no. I mean, right now, we just got to win every game that we can and worry about those games as they come up, because we can't concern ourselves with 2 weeks down the line. We got to concern ourselves with tomorrow.
Well, the fact that you pitched a complete game, you knocked off Dwight Gooden, you came from being only a half a game in front to now 3.5 in front, and that game you pitched today certainly was a major contribution to the team. So heartiest congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
Our guest, Greg Matthews. Tomorrow, football. The NFL season kicks off with a doubleheader, starting with NFL Live at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, Joe, it was a big victory for the St. Louis Cardinals. They're on a roll now.
Yes, they are. And you heard Greg Matthews talk about that feeling in the clubhouse. It's certainly carried out today. And I'll tell you, tomorrow, well, the Mets have to really regroup. That's all you can say.
And they'll have to be led by David Cone. And you might remember David Cone suffered a broken bone in the hand. He was around to bunt. He was hit by a pitch. Now he's hopefully back on the beam for them. And meanwhile, big Danny Cox will be taking dead aim to try and sweep the Mets. And, of course, that would really knock New York reeling should the Cardinals do that.
And the Cardinals are back onto their game. I don't know what happened in Montreal, but when they can get a walk, stolen base, sacrifice fly, and what have you, that's the way they play. They force mistakes, and they did it today.
And the big advantage for the Cardinals, they will be going home following this road trip and play 14 home games, while the Mets will have 8 games left at home, 13 on the road, albeit they do have games against Pittsburgh and the Phillies, and they have beaten them. That's it for Joe Garagiola. This is Vin Scully saying so long from Shea Stadium in New York, where the Cardinals beat the Mets 8-1.